Hello, I'm going to show you how to do the textured chain stitch. It's actually one of the fun stitch that I created because what it does is it looks different depending how thick your yarn is to your gauge. So I'm going to show you pieces I did on this particular loom first, and then we'll do the hat. And so this is the hat I did on this gauge, and there it is, textured chain stitch, and you can see why I called it that. It looks kind of chain-like and has a lot of texture, depth to it. And I did the curvy wave stitch for the brim, which is another one of my stitches that I have on my YouTube channel. So that's what that looks like. And so this yarn that I used is Barcelona, and the color was Rosa. And it's a number 5, but it's a very thin number 5. It's not much thicker than a lot of worsteds. So it was not all Barcelona is equal, that's for sure. If I compare a bunch of different Barcelonas I've had, you'll see all kinds of different widths. So anyway, this was a thinner one. And that's what you get on the 3/4 gauge. And then here is a headband that I did. Now this was a lot thicker yarn. There, you can see the stitch there. And this is what it looks like with the thicker yarn on the 36 peg loom, but it's the gauge, the 3/4 inch gauge. And it has a very different look to it. Lots of texture. Even more texture. So that's what it looks like. And this yarn is a Mary Maxim one, Mary Maxim Marvelous. And it's a number 5 yarn, but it's a lot thicker yarn than the last one I showed you. It's about the same thickness as a Charisma. And so that's what you get. So I'm going to make this hat, but I'm going to make it with a thicker yarn. And we should get either the same look as this one here, or perhaps a slightly different one, because the yarn's a little bit thinner that I'm going to use. This is actually a Caron cake, and it's supposed to be a 6 yarn, and it's a Caron chunky cake in the color trifle, but it's pretty darn thin for number 6 yarn. As a matter of fact, that Mary Maxim Marvelous is thicker than it. So it's hard to believe that it is a number 6, but there it is, and it's not twisted very tight, almost acts like a roving, but it's not a roving. Anyway, we're going to use that. So I'll just put this here, and we'll do that textured chain hat. So we start by doing a slip knot. And I do an easy slip knot. I just do this and place it on the loom. And then we're going to do a chain cast on. We take the hook, put it into the loop, and slip the working yarn under and pull it up through the loop. Just like we're doing a purl or something. And of course, my hook went into the knot there. Let's try it again, getting it up through the yarn. There we go. And we just get the loop through. And then we're going to want to pull this just a little bit. And I usually secure it on here, but you don't have to. You can tighten it up after. And then we can put our loom hook down. And all we're going to do is take the loop, put it behind the peg, slip the working yarn through it, and just snug it up. Then we just go all the way around the loom, snugging it up, just like this. And I usually check it when I get about here, because I like to make sure I've got the right tension so that my brim is going to look good. and it's pretty snug, but it's not so snug it won't go over the top, and that's what I want. I want it to be snug, but I want to be able to pull it over the top. And so that's all good. I just cast it on. Okay, so I'm just going to keep doing this until I get around. So I'll meet you back up when I get to over here, and I'll show you how to finish this off. Okay, so I've just done the last one, and then here we are back at the start peg, right? And to finish it off, I'm just going to put the loop over the starting peg and pull it and tighten it up, and then just knit it over, and then we're all secured and ready to do the first row. And so the first row we're going to do is a row of purl, and to purl you just put your hook into the loop, pull the working yarn up, and then you take the whole thing off the loom and put the loop back on, just like that. So scooping up the yarn into a loop, and then just laying it over and pulling. There's lots of videos on YouTube on how to purl, so I'm just going to show you one more time. I've made the loop and flip it off, put the loop back on, snug it up. So I'm just going to go around the loom doing the purl until I get here, and then we'll go into the owl eye stitch. That's what the curvy wave is, a row of purl and a row of owl eye stitch. And if you need to, you can look at my owl eye, any of my owl eye patterns to see the stitch, and I have one on just the stitch. Owl eye was the first stitch that I ever created. I really like it and use it in a lot of projects. So I'm just going to purl all the way around here, and then we'll start doing the row of owl eye. Okay, so I've just done my last purl here, and now I'm going to go into the owl eye stitch. So how I do that is I'm going to take the working yarn, just lay it over and knit over peg 1, and then we go behind peg 1 over peg 1 and 2. Now we're going to start doing the stitch. Now with owl eye, every peg ends up getting 2 stitches on it. So this number 1 is getting its second stitch. Number 2 peg is getting its first stitch. Any peg we're at, we're going to call peg 1. And we're going to go in front of peg 1, wrap peg 2. And here's peg 1 getting its second stitch. And peg 2 getting its first stitch. And that's all there is to it, and you do it nice and loose. It'll be easy for you to knit. And knit over. Any peg you're at's peg 1, go in front of it and wrap over peg 1 and 2 and knit it off. And that's all there is to it. And it moves pretty fast. And so we're just going to knit around doing the owl eye, and I have lots of videos, as I said, on the owl eye if you need to look at it and understand how to do it. Also, you don't have to do this brim. I really like this brim, especially because it's different, and I like doing owl eye. But I kind of got bored with just the same old brims. That was usually garter stitch or ribs, and I've done so many of them. And it's just nice to actually have created a bunch of different brims just to keep my interest up and to keep my works looking different so they don't all look the same. But any brim that you'd like to do will work with this if you don't want to do the curvy wave stitch. So anyway, I'm going to pause it, and I'll meet you up here so I can show you how you're going to go back into the purl stitch. Okay, so I've done owl eye all the way down, and now I would be wrapping this and going over this, but instead I'm just going to do this because this is our first peg for purling, and I'm going to put the second stitch on peg 2. And so there we go. That'll keep it nice and even. And now you do your row of purl, just starting here and doing your row of purl and putting it over. And you're going to do a row of purl and a row of owleye and a row of purl and a row of owleye until you get how long you want your brim to be. And I think I'm going to do a brim about an 1.5 inches, which is what I did on this other one. I did the brim. There we go. About 1.5 inches here. Went right into the hat. So that's what we're going to do. And I'll meet you back here when we're ready to start the stitch. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to do the textured chain stitch part of the hat, which is this stitch that we're seeing right here. And with the thicker yarn, of course, it brought all that together and gave you that different look. And so that's a different look we're going to get here. But this here could be even made more lacy. You use a thinner yarn, and you'd get a very nice lacy type of whatever you wanted, infinity scarf or shawl or whatever you'd like. So you can have it looking lacy like that, or you can have the thicker textured look. So here's how we do it. First we go behind peg 1, over peg 1 and 2. I'll bring this close and we just knit them off. So we're doing owleye. But now we're going to knit peg 1 and 2 again. So this is done in 2 peg pairs. Okay, so we're kind of keep going around and around and around, so you don't have to have an even loom. You can use any loom that's the right head size for you. That won't be a problem. Now what we're going to do is the figure 8 right on top of owleye. So this is the version we're going to do. We're going to go behind peg 2 and 1, between them, wrap over peg 2 and knit it off. And then once we're here, we're going to tighten up the slack, and we're going to have quite a bit of slack. So we just go over here and pull, and a lot got tightened up. And tightening up the slack is important. And the reason it's important is you're going to have the nice clean squares if you're tightening it up. If you didn't, this part up here would just be very loose, and you wouldn't have as nice of a pattern. So that's why we're tightening that up. Okay, now here we are, and the working yarn is right here. So this is what we call our peg 1, and we wrap in front of peg 1 and 2. And because we pulled it tight, you're going to kind of see this little V here. You just work it over. If you find it getting too tight to work over, don't pull it quite as tight over there. And then you just knit them both over. And then you take your working yarn and again wrap behind the 2 pegs, in between them, and around peg 2, and then just knit it off. And then you pull the direction that you started in and just, there we go, take up the slack. And then you wrap it over peg 1 and 2, knit them over. And then you're going to go behind peg 1 and 2, between them, and like that. Doing the figure 8, knitting it over, and then pulling. And we're going to get tight so you can see how this is tightening it up. See? We pulled the yarn there, we pulled the yarn there, we tightened up that whole bar there. And then we go over peg 1 and 2. Knit it over. And oops, over to here. So peg 1 and 2, going back over peg 1, in between 1 and 2, knitting it over like this, and snugging it up. Okay, one more time, we're at peg 1. We're going to go, and the yarn can sometimes end up like it's right in between, but this is the direction you're going, that's always peg 1. So over peg 1 and 2, knit it over, take your working yarn, go behind, in between, and wrap peg 2 like that, and knit over, and snug it up. Over peg 1 and 2, knit it over, working yarn behind peg 1 and 2, front of 1, in between them, wrapping peg 2 like that, and knitting over and snugging it up. And that's all there is to it. And then you're going to go as long as you want your hat. We're just going to have a little bit of finishing up to do at the end. So I usually like to do my hats around 9 inches long. It gives me a bit of a slouchy hat because I have a very small head, but that's more or less the average size for women. But you can do it slouchy, 10, 11, you know, as big as you want to make it, or make it a beanie size. But I'll meet you up there to finish off the hat, and we'll see you then. Okay, I'm back, and I have kept going. So there's the curvy wave stitch, and here I am. I've done the stitch, and here's how it looks on this yarn. I really like the way it looks. A really nice textured stitch. It has lots of texture. And yeah, it looks very different from this one. Not lacy like this one. But it's the same stitch. You know, if I pull it out, you can see it's exactly the same stitches here. And that's how different it looks on different yarns. So it has, oh, just, it looks so different. I'm going to do a close-up. Looks so completely different from this hat. Hard to believe it's the same stitch, but boy, it sure does look different with the different yarns. I like both of the looks. Oh, and the inside too, kind of interesting. That's quite attractive. There's the inside of this one. So if you had something like an infinity scarf, your other side looks just great, or a shawl. The other side looks great too. And on this one, here's what your other side looks like. Like that. So it's very nice on both sides. So there we are. I have my 9 inches. And yeah, this yarn is quite nice, the trifle. It started with the navy, and it went to this lighter blue and then into the gray. And I think the next color was going to be a kind of a white, and then into this kind of a red color. But we're ending it on the gray. Okay, so now that we've done that stitch, you will have ended either on oh no, what am I saying? You will have ended on that stitch because it's just a 1-row stitch, and I like that about it. You never have to worry about a jog. It's going to look the same all the way around. It's going to look completely seamless, which is a really nice for any kind of a round thing, that's for sure. So anyways, now what we're going to do is a row of E-wrap. And if you'd like, with this, I did 1 row of E-wrap, and that's how I wanted it. It's like I say, I like to do mine slightly slouchy, so it had this kind of a slouchy look to it with this nice star. And if you wanted it to have more of a beanie, you might want it to look a little bit flatter on top, so you could do, instead of just one row of the E-wrap, you could put up to 3 rows there. But the bind off I did is nice and flat. It's you know, quite flat. So we do the 1 row of the E-wrap and just wrap your loom, right, and knit them off at the end, and I'll meet you up. Okay, so we've done our row of E-wrap, and now all we're going to do is reduce this before we bind it off. So we're going to take the yarn, working yarns here, we're going to take the yarn off peg 1, and we're just going to move it over to peg 2 and slip it on, and then we can just knit it off. And then we go over to the next peg that was beside that, take it and slip it on the next peg, and then just knit it off. And we take the next one and move it over, slip it on the peg, and then just knit it off. Go to the next one here, bring it over, put it on the peg, and then just knit it off. And we're just going to go all the way around the loom doing that, so I'll meet you back up. Okay, so I've reduced it by half. Now if you had an uneven loom, you're going to end up with the 2 pegs together instead of the way that I have here. But it doesn't matter, it'll still work out just fine. Now we're going to take the working yarn and just wrap it around about 1.5 times, and then just cut it. There we go. And then you need to get yourself a needle, or if you're one of the people that likes to use your loom hook to do this, you can use your loom hook to scoop them up. But I like a needle, so I'm going to get my needle. Okay, and I'm just going to thread the needle. There we go. And then we're just going to go and scoop up our loops. Just like that. And this yarn is splitting on me. So I'm going to go back up and get that piece right there that I missed. There we go. Through all the yarn. There we go. And we're just going to go around the loom, scooping these up. And I will meet you when we get back up to here and we've scooped them all up. Okay, so I put the working yarn through all of the loops, and I'm just going to go back and put it through this very first loop a second time. And then it's all nice and secured, and we can just start taking them off. And you just go around the loom and pop them off the pegs and go any direction. They just all come off. Okay. And there we go, we got it all off the loom. And all we're going to do now is start to draw it in. And I'm going to go over to the wrong side. So I'm just going to put the needle through here and fold this all inside here. There we go. And pull this tighter. And I'm not going to need to have this so long, so I'm going to cut it off so it's easier to do this part. So I'm going to cut it down. There we go. And keep pulling it in. Nice and tight. And there we go. And then I just sort of fold it so I can see where it says that I've pulled it in to make it easier to sew. There. Nice and tight like that. Pull it in, and I just take my needle and I just sort of sew around here just to close off that opening. Get it nice and secure. And then I'm just going to tie a knot like that. Tighten it up. Go through maybe another time and tie a knot. And then I just cut it and leave it. If it's not going to be reversible or be used as a reversible hat, then although it's really quite pretty on this side too, nice on both sides. And then I'm going to bring it through here and stretch it. Stretch it this way, stretch it that way, but mostly stretch it like this to set the stitches. And there. Okay, there's our hat. And here's what the stitch looks like. It's got a lot of texture to it. And looks very different from this one with the loose thread, just to compare them again. They have a very different look to them, and I like them both. But they're made identically, except with a different yarn. And then there's your there's what your brim looks like. Well, it looks like I split that stitch there, but that's okay there. There we go. Looks good. Nice and flat here. Nice drape to it. And there you go. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have fun doing this stitch. And depending on the yarn that you choose and the gauge, so you could get this look, for example, if you use something like a number 3 yarn on a very small gauge loom, well, not very small, but something like a 3/8 inch gauge, you could use a number 3 yarn and you would get a look like this. So you know, it depends. And if you used, let's say you had a worsted weight yarn, used it on a smaller gauge than 3/8 inch, you would get a look like this. So you can get these looks all depending on what yarn and what gauge you want. And so you can get the thicker, more textured look, or you can get the lacy look. And so, okay, until I see you next time, bye.